So this is where we left off with the toaster for beginners in part 2. In part 1 we created the basic body for the toaster, and in part 2 we made this hole for the toast and we made the little lever here to push down. Coming back to the diagram, what we want to do now is we want to create this knob to turn it on. I don't know if it overrides this thing or what, but we're going to do it just for the fun of it. Okay. Now we're going to use a circle to do this. You could use a cylinder, but I'm going to use a circle. And we already have our 3D cursor, this little sort of red and white circle there, very close to the front where we want to bring in our new circle. So with that there, and if it wasn't there, for example, if I hit Shift C, it brings the cursor right back to the very center of the stage. I could say, well, I want to bring my circle to create the knob close to the front, so maybe I would select this handle thing here, and I would go Shift S, cursor to selected. That'll move the 3D cursor to whatever was selected, which is this thing, which is a lot closer to the front than the middle down there. All right, so we're going to bring in a circle. So Shift A is the shortcut. We're going to choose Mesh Circle. Before we do anything, I'm going to notice that the vertice count for this circle is 32. I'm going to switch that to 24. Okay, so it's very large and it's also lying this way. So I'm going to rotate it around the X. I'm going to go RX 90. So now it's standing up, but it's still very large. I like to go into edit mode to scale. So I'm going to go into edit mode and I'm going to switch to vertex so I can see my points. And I'm going to hit S to scale. I'm just going to pull it in like this. Now it may end up disappearing into the body of the toaster. I'm just going to bring it out a little bit and I'm going to bring it down to roughly where I'd want it. I'm going to press 1 to look from the front, and it's still too big, so I'm going to hit S again. And that's just my daughter playing there, and my son sleeping behind, so we'll see how it goes. I'm recording this one in the day, as you can see from behind me. I'm going to pull it back a little bit so it's close to the body of the toaster, and that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and make this. As you can see here, it sort of goes in a little bit. Forget about the depth right there. It goes in and then it comes out. So we're going to do that. So to make it go in, I'm going to hit E to extrude and left click to accept. I've created new geometry. We don't see it. So now I'm going to go S to scale, start pulling in, and you start to see some new geometry there. So I'm going to use that as this sort of flat part, and then it's going to come out. So we're going to extrude outwards. I'm just going to tilt this a little bit. I'm going to hit E to extrude and I'm going to pull out in the Y direction. E, left click, pull it out. But it doesn't just come straight out, it kind of tapers in. So now we're going to go S and I'll pull in just a little bit. Now let's stop there and note that some of this is light gray in color and some is dark gray. That's because when I extruded, some of my polys are facing the wrong direction. They're actually facing on the inside where it's light gray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit A to deselect, A to select again. And remember, if you're using version 2.8, the shortcuts are different. I believe it's Alt-A. I'm now going to recalculate the normals. So I'm going to go Mesh, Normals, Recalculate Outside, or Control-N. And that'll flip them. So it's light gray on the outside, and I don't care about the inside. Okay, so what else does this dial do? It comes in and it dips down in. I don't know if you can see that very well, but oops, let's get the blender going back again. So here's what we're going to do. We need to reselect all of this. I'm going to do that in edge selection. I just find it a little bit easier to see what's going on. So I'm going to hover my mouse over this and I'm going to go Shift and Alt. So holding Shift, Alt, and left click. Now I'll get the whole thing. I don't want to just get a piece like that and a piece like that and go around. I'm going to go Shift, Alt, and click. I now want to bring this in a little bit, create like a lip. So I'm going to go E to extrude, left click, S. Pull in just a little bit. So I now have that region. I then want to come in and together. So I'm going to go E to extrude and left click, pull down in the Y direction. And a nice effect is to scale S, and I get a bit of an angle on that indent part. Now I need to bring this together to finish it off. Okay, there's a few different ways of doing that. What I'm going to suggest we do with that selected is come down to Mesh, Faces, Grid Fill, and that will fill it with quads, four-sided polygons. And for the span, I'm going to try to choose the lowest number I can, like try 2, and then press enter. And that will reduce the number of polys as well. Not that that's a big problem. Okay. Now we have the basics of our knob, but we also need to do this part that goes back towards the body. Okay, we've got this flat part that goes back right here. Here's the flat part. So I'm going to Shift Alt and click that edge, and we're going to create that part that goes back. So we're going to extrude in the Y. E, left click, pull. Like that. Now if that's too close, I can select it all with A, and I can move it out. And if I didn't like this, the length of that, I want more, I can Shift Alt and click it. When it goes all the way around, I can just drag it a little bit further. All right, great, deselect. Now, I'm going to be putting a subdivision surface on this, and then I'll show you some other work we need to do. So I'm going to go back into object mode. I like to do it in object mode. Come up to the wrench icon, add modifier, subdivision surface 2, and click smoothing. So there you go. Now it doesn't look very defined right now. It certainly doesn't look like this. And so we need to add some loop cuts or edge loops. So go back into edit mode. And here's where to add edge loops. Well, first of all, where you see this white stuff, what's happening is the subdivision surface is curving the mesh. Sort of like that, but it's not very defined. So I'm going to hover my mouse over one of these lines, Control R, click and drag, and the white stuff starts to disappear. I'm not going to push it right to the very bottom, just a little bit above, like that. Let's have a look at that. There, we're starting to define this edge, but we need to do some more. Very often, let me turn off the subdivision surface and you'll see this. There's an edge right here. That was our original edge. Very often we will bring an edge loop on both sides of an existing edge if you want to sharpen it. So there's the existing edge. I brought that one in a minute ago. Let's turn the subdivision surface back on. I've got an edge in the white area right here. Let's bring one here. Control R, click, bring it in a similar distance, doesn't have to be exact, to this one. Now let's have a look at that. You can see the edge is much more defined. That looks good. This looks a little too soft, and so does this, so let's do something about that. Okay, so see this edge? Shift Alt and click. I would bring an edge loop on both sides of this. So there's a couple of ways to do this. I'll do you the typical way. There's the edge. I'm going to go Shift R, or what do I do? Control R, click, drag close, and do one here. Control R, drag close on both sides of this middle edge. Let's see what that's done. Whoops, I hit scale by accident. That looks very nice, doesn't it? Not too sharp, not razor sharp, but just sharp enough to catch some light still. It's round enough to catch light and reflect it. Let's do something about the top here, because in my illustration, the top is relatively flat. I don't know if you can tell that or not. We'll go back into edit mode, and we'll say, okay, how can we make this part flatter? It looks flat if you see the polys, but if I take off subdivision surface, it looks flat there. But here, it is really rounded. Well, there's a couple of ways to do that. There's the edge that goes around on the outside. There's the edge that goes around on the inside. All right, let's bring an edge loop here. Control R, click, and bring it close to the outside edge. Now, I said many times you'll bring an edge on both sides. Let's have a look at what that's done first of all. It's getting better. All right, let's go ahead and bring one on the other side. Control R, click, drag it up, not too tight. And now you have a nice defined edge on the outside, but the inside is looking a bit soft. I mean, it's pleasing, looks like a coffee cup, but that's not what we want for a dial. So let's do a similar thing for this edge. All right, let's bring an edge loop, Control R, close to there, and click down here and bring it up close to there, similar distance. Now this part is sharp, this part is sharp. The final thing is this part kind of just blends in. We want that a bit sharper. So back in edge mode. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring one edge loop down towards this surface. So watch this. Control R, click and pull. And as I do, it starts to flatten out a bit more. I don't have to push it all the way to the bottom. I don't like doing that. I just like it maybe around there. Object mode. How about that? Not too sharp, not too soft, just very pleasing to look at. Okay, so there's our knobs so far. Okay, now this knob has some little extrusions that you could sort of grip to turn the thing, so I'll show you how to make those. And just one thing to note is that these little extrusions have like sort of a raised region there and a raised region there, or just another region actually is probably a better way to put it. So yeah, right around here. So back into edit mode, deselect anything selected. Now this is the area here that I'm going to use to create that. This is getting a little bit more advanced than beginners. It's not hard by any means, but I want to define an area right in the middle where I'll have these. I want to leave a little bit of space, this black area here and this black area here. I want to leave some space between where I have these bumps. So the way I do that is by adding some more edge loops. All right. So what I'll do is I'm going to go Control R, click, and just drag an edge loop to near the top like that. Deselect, Control R, ring one, maybe a similar distance to the bottom. So I have now defined an area in here, like when we made the hole in the top. I've defined an area that I'm going to use to create those bumps, and an area where I won't. And the way we make those bumps is like this. I'm going to go into face selection. Now you can see the dots, at least in 2.79, version 2.79. And I want to select these. But I don't want to go around the circle like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hover my mouse over one of the lines that separates two of these faces. And I'm going to go Shift Alt and click, and that gets the whole thing. It's very similar to if you were in edge selection, Shift Alt and click, you get the whole edge. Like that. In face selection, Shift Alt and click, and you get all of that. Okay? Now let me have a quick look at this. I've got these and I've got little spaces in between. So what I'm going to do is I need to create little rectangles that are individually on their own to do this technique. Right now, if I was to extrude, I'll show you. I'm just going to go E and I'm going to pull out. No, I'm not going to pull out. I'm going to go Alt S. I'll talk about that in a second. It comes out as a big ring and I don't want that. So I'm going to Control Z a few times. All right. I'm going to Shift Alt and click to get all of that. And then I'm going to press the I, letter I on my keyboard twice. I'm going to go I. Now that's done something really weird. Don't lose the selection. Pull with your mouse until you get the right size of squares that you want. And you'll notice that they're all separate. I like that space, and left click and stop. Keep them selected. All right. So I've done that. And now I have little spaces in between. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the side, under the tools, under add, and I'm going to go extrude individual. I'm going to press this button, and then with my mouse and my arrow probably very close to here, I'm just going to pull down. Because once you click the button, you activate it. So if I move my mouse over to here and then pull down, it's already done something weird. So watch this. Click, pull down, and they start to come out. Now I don't need them to come out to there. I only want them to come out a little bit. I'm pushing my mouse up a little bit, maybe there. That might even be too much. I'm just going to click to finalize that. That's probably even too much. In fact, if I go back, Control Z a couple times, I, back to this, get my sizes the way I want them, say there. I'm just on that angle so I can see. If I then extrude individual and pull out, I can see better. Maybe I just want them to come up that much. All right, now, if I go into object mode, I still have that selected. I want to show you something. That looks cool, but it doesn't look like what we want. which are these sort of rectangles. They are a little rounded. So we're going to do one more thing. We're going to go into edit mode. With those still selected, I'm going to add an edge loop towards the top and an edge loop towards the bottom, and that will flatten them out. Watch this. Control R, click and drag, and see them flattening out. I don't need to push it right to the very top. I just want it about there, and an equal distance near the bottom. About there. Deselect, back into object mode, and we have created our knob. It may look a little different than in the picture, but that's okay. All right, let's save our work. And the final thing we can do is we can add a little arrow onto this. I'm going to select the knob itself, and you'll notice that the gizmo here, my transform tool, my move tool, scale tool, whatever, is up here, but my knob is here, and I've got the knob selected. Like if I deselect and I select the toaster, it moves over there. If I select the knob, the gizmo is right here. That's because when we brought in the circle originally to make this, it showed up right there, and then I moved it down. I'm going to come over here, set origin to geometry, and that will set the gizmo, the origin point, to the actual knob itself, not to something else. With that there, I'm going to Shift S, cursor to select it. I've moved the 3D cursor right to there because I'm going to bring in another object to make the arrow. I'm going to bring in a plane. So Shift A, mesh plane, and it comes in and it's huge. It's also rotated in a weird way. I want it up and down like this. I want to rotate it in the X90, RX90. I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to hit S to scale, and I'm just going to drag it way down in, pretty small. I can't see it now. I'm just going to move it up. I'm going to press the period key with it selected to zoom right in and then adjust my view. I'm going to scale it a bit more, and I can work with that. Now, I want to make an arrow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this edge, and I'm going to scale it in, SX. I'm not going to make it to a point because that's just too much, I think. I prefer it like that. Deselect, that's generally an arrow. Let's look right from the front and position this. Put the Z, come down. Okay, it's too big, so let's go S and scale it. Get it to the right size that it looks like it would fit. I'm going to make it a bit smaller. And about there. Let's look from the side. 3. It's far from the surface. That's the surface. I don't have to hit it right now. Let's give it some thickness by extruding outwards. So I'm going to hit E to extrude, left click, and then in the Y direction, pull it out. Give it a reasonable thickness so that I can see it as a 3D object. Let's deselect. And let's go into object mode, and the origin is not on that, it's on the dial, because that's where we brought it in. Let's, with that selected, set the origin to geometry, and it'll put the gizmo right on it. It wasn't a critical thing to do or anything. Let's put it there, and let's see how it would look with a bevel on it, with the bevel modifier. So under the wrench, add modifier, bevel, let's zoom in, and let's click for segments here, 2. And then drag this, the amount, down a little bit and see if we can get to a point where we've got less and less, and we can't really, you can't go too low on this. From a distance, that's going to look just fine. In fact, I might even be able to take it and in object mode, just go S and scale it a bit bigger. Get it as big as I can get it so that it's visible. In fact, I might want it thicker. Let's scale in the Y. And just pull out and do that so that out here I could see it as a real 3D object. Might be a bit too thick, but now if I take this and pull it out, the back face, here, let's hit the period key to focus on that. The back face is still present and it's not going to be visible. So I'm going to go into edit mode and actually delete that, and that will change a few things. So let's select that back face, X, faces, and that will change my bevel a little bit, but it actually will clean it up. So let's bring that so it just touches. There you go. I don't need to press apply. Maybe a tiny bit too big. All right, whatever. And now we have our dial. I might want to select the arrow, shift and select the knob, look from the front, and say, maybe I need to bring it down, because if this is coming down, it's going to hit. Just have it roughly equal from there and there, or down a little bit more. I just think it looks a little bit, yeah, maybe it is a little bit low now. Select the arrow in that, maybe roughly equal is the best. Okay. I don't know that it's really necessary to put this text on there. I think we'll skip that for this video, and we'll move on next time to making some materials for this, and it's the very basic render. Okay, thanks for watching.